It's the nature of a stunt actor's job to go through some pain. What's not in the job description is losing their life, or getting anywhere near it. Movies and TV sets do everything they can to keep stunt actors safe. In these tragic instances, every safety measure failed.
Harry O'Connor, who served as a stunt double for Vin Diesel in XXX, died on the Prague set of the film while performing a paragliding stunt in his place. An experienced skydiver and stunt performer who joined the industry after retiring as a Navy SEAL, O'Connor reportedly collided with the pillar of the Pulaski Bridge while paragliding and broke his neck in the process before passing away. It was his second effort to complete the stunt, the first of which was successful and used in the movie. Director Rob Cohen later said on his commentary track, "We had 500 stuntmen involved with this picture. 499 didn't get a scratch. It shows you the lengths to which we will go to bring this kind of intense experience to the viewer. Stuntmen know they are in danger. They make their living through danger. Most of the time, it's all right. Sometimes, unfortunately, it isn't." O'Connor was 44.
You are America's best. Make us proud.
Stunt pilot Art Scholl had become internationally renowned for his aerial stunt work in films like Blue Thunder and The Right Stuff before he was selected to complete an inverted air stunt that would become a big part of the storyline in Top Gun. According to the Los Angeles Times, Scholl was heard relaying his in-air troubles during production on the scene, saying on his radio, "I've got a problem here." Scholl was highly skilled at the maneuver, so colleagues concluded that there must have been a mechanical failure that caused his vessel to crash. However, neither he nor his plane were recovered from the debris, despite a search effort, so the details leading up to his death are unknown. The mystery that surrounds the failure that cost him his life still lingers with his widow, Judy Scholl, who told the Daily Mail, "Art didn't say what the problem was. This is the one thing I'm not happy about with him. So I don't know if he had a control failure, where maybe the camera jammed into the flight controls, or whether he had an issue with the flight controls where he wasn't able to get the airplane out of the flat spin, or whether he was disoriented. He didn't say." Scholl was 53. In one of the grisliest accidents to ever occur on a Hollywood set, stuntman Jose Marco, a double for Burt Reynolds, was brutally attacked by a real-life shark while shooting an underwater scene for Shark. Marco was filming alongside a subdued bull shark in scuba gear when a great white managed to make it through the nets protecting the area from the rest of the sea, and charged at the camera crew before launching at Marco and disemboweling the actor where he swam. Crew members tried to steer the shark away from Marco with spears, but the animal was undeterred, and the stuntman's resulting injuries were so severe that he died shortly after being transported to the hospital. The incident was catastrophic, but producers wanted to and ultimately did use the footage of Marco's death in the movie, along with publicizing the incident as a marketing push. Director Samuel Fuller was so disgusted that he disavowed the movie, unsuccessfully attempting to have his name removed from its credits. Marco was 32. The Vancouver, Canada set of Deadpool 2 became the site of a tragedy in August 2017, when a stuntwoman named Joy S.J. Harris was killed while attempting to complete a motorcycle sequence for the film. Harris was substituting for actress Zazie Beetz as the character Domino, and was not wearing a helmet during the scene in question to match the character. Harris had successfully completed the stunt 4 times in a row, but on the 5th attempt, she lost control of the vehicle and went airborne before careening into a glass building. Local news crews reported that she was treated on site by paramedics after the incident, but was later taken to the hospital and ultimately declared dead. In a statement, a rep for 20th Century Fox said of the incident, "We are deeply saddened by the accident that occurred on the set of Deadpool 2 this morning. Our hearts and prayers are with the family, friends, and colleagues of our crew member during this difficult time." Lead actor Ryan Reynolds echoed that sentiment, writing on X, formerly known as Twitter, "We're heartbroken, shocked, and devastated, but recognized nothing can come close to the grief and inexplicable pain her family and loved ones must feel at this moment. My heart pours out to them, along with each and every person she touched in this world." Angela Bassett's double in Vampire in Brooklyn had invited her mother and siblings to the set of the film to watch her work on the day her life was cut short. Sonia Davis's mother, Wanda Sapp, would later reveal that she overheard her daughter casting doubt on the safety of the stunt she was about to perform during their fateful visit. Telling the Los Angeles Times, "The last words I heard my baby say was when she yelled down to the stunt coordinator, 'Are you sure?' I could feel Sonia wasn't comfortable with the stunt." Davis had been performing a 42-foot backward jump off of a building, but rather than landing safely on the airbag that was supposed to cushion her fall, she instead bounced back into the building before making impact with the ground, much to her family's horror. Her mother initiated a multi-million-dollar wrongful death suit against the studio, Paramount Pictures, along with director Wes Craven and producer star Eddie Murphy, but the case was ultimately dismissed. Stunt coordinators on the film would later claim in an oral history of the movie that Davis didn't perform the jump correctly, but there were also no ambulances on set during the incident. Davis was 32.
One more!
Rest in pieces.
The Expendables movies were envisioned as a vehicle for pure action-driven spectacle, bringing together the biggest stars in the genre. Led by Sylvester Stallone, the films have featured such heavyweight action heroes as Arnold Schwarzenegger, Bruce Willis, Chuck Norris, Jet Li, Wesley Snipes, and many more. But with all that action comes the increased risk of disaster. And tragically, that's just what happened on the set of The Expendables 2. During production of a second-unit water scene on Lake Agnaya Nova, Bulgaria, stunt actor Kun Lu was killed and fellow double Nuo's son was severely injured when a planned explosion went awry. The pair were riding on an inflatable rubber raft at the time. Lu was reportedly doubling for Stallone himself, while Sun was subbing for Jet Li in the second-unit shot. Lu was just 26 at the time of his death, and the film was dedicated to his memory. Sun managed to survive his serious injuries and filed suit against Sylvester Stallone and Millennium Films for damages. The family of Lu, meanwhile, also pursued wrongful death damages against the parties responsible for the movie, including stunt coordinator Chad Stahelski, who went on to direct the John Wick films. In 2017, it was reported that the plaintiffs were awarded 195,000 Hong Kong dollars, while Jet Li himself gave 5.8 million Hong Kong dollars to the stuntman's family. Written and directed by the late schlock auteur Albert Pune, the 1982 sword and sandal adventure The Sword and the Sorcerer starred Lee Horsley as Prince Talon, who learns he's descended from noble blood and must take on a powerful and evil wizard. Though it's not one of that decade's most memorable movies in the genre, it made the news after one of the film's performers, 37-year-old John Hale Jack Tyree, died in a stunt gone wrong during production. Tyree was a veteran of the industry who'd worked on everything from Escape from New York to History of the World Part 1. He was filming a scene in Hollywood's Griffith Park for The Sword and the Sorcerer, in which he was to jump from an 80-foot cliff. He unfortunately landed a few feet away from the airbag intended to cushion his fall, causing severe injuries that eventually cost him his life. As reported by the Calgary Herald, an official said at the time, it was definitely a high-risk stunt, but Jack was a real professional. He had some more difficult high falls before, tougher than the one he faced on The Sword and the Sorcerer. Perhaps surprisingly, the stunt itself was left in the film despite Tyree's tragic passing, and the film was dedicated to him in the credits. The James Bond franchise has built a reputation for its impressive stunts and elaborate action sequences. Each film in the series seems to attempt to top the one before it, and to do that can sometimes mean making the stunts riskier and riskier. But by the time the franchise got to its 12th entry in 1981, for Your Eyes Only, the risk-taking may have gone a little too far. To create one skiing and bobsledding chase that takes place amidst the wintry slopes of Italy, the film involved the use of a four-man bobsled, operated by a second-unit director to better capture footage of the action. Unfortunately, 23-year-old Italian stunt driver Paolo Rigoni fell off the sleigh and was quickly killed after it overturned and dragged him underneath. It wasn't the first or last serious injury to happen on the set of a James Bond film, but it was the deadliest. It's been reported that it was his death, along with the death of professional bobsledder James Morgan just a week earlier during the 1981 Bobsled World Championships, that prompted the decision to shorten the Cortina bobsledding track where Rigoni was killed, to make it safer. Filmmaker John Woo was one of the hottest action directors of the 90s. After a string of groundbreaking features in his native Hong Kong, Woo was wooed by Hollywood and came over to helm such favorites as Hard Target, Broken Arrow, and Face Off. By the late 2000s, he was back directing smash hits in China, and one of his first in his return to his homeland was Red Cliff, starring Tony Leung. It was the highest-grossing movie of the year in the Middle Kingdom, but came at the cost of a stuntman's life. A period piece about the Battle of China's Three Kingdoms, the set of the film became a deadly inferno when a blaze overtook the production, claiming the life of stuntman Lu Yanqing and injuring 6 other crew members. The accident took place during a ship battle scene in Xiaotongshan, just outside of Beijing. During the filming of the sequence, a smaller vessel engulfed in flames was planned to collide with a larger ship, but high winds carried the fire to the second ship and the flames spread uncontrollably, injuring those on board and killing Yanqing. A statement from the US studio Lion Rock, which was co-financing the film, read, "The crew of Red Cliff is deeply distraught and full of regret." Comes a Horseman was a 1978 Western starring Jane Fonda, James Caan, and Jason Robards. Robards starred as Jacob J.W. Ewing, a rancher who wants to protect his sprawling valley from big business tycoons who would try to exploit it for its natural resources. Working as Robards' stunt double was stunt actor Jim Shepard, who had a wealth of experience on westerns like The Wild Bunch and Hour of the Gun, and even sci-fi outings like Planet of the Apes. In Comes a Horseman, Shepard was filming a scene in which he was supposed to be dragged behind a galloping horse through a fence to simulate the death and disappearance of Robards' character. However, the horse didn't stick to the straight path through a gate as planned, and the unexpected equine maneuvers caused Shepard to be thrown off, with his head striking a fence post. While he survived the initial blunt head trauma, he died not long after being hospitalized. The incident sadly occurred on one of the last days of filming. Although the scene did cut away from the fatal collision, the 41-year-old Shepard's last stunt was still included in the picture.
Hi guys.
Colonel McCoy!
I was just in the neighborhood.
Though mostly known for his martial arts movies, Chuck Norris made plenty of military action flicks in the 80s, with Delta Force being one of his most memorable. A surprise cult hit that co-starred Lee Marvin and got a sequel in 1990, Delta Force 2: The Colombian Connection. For the follow-up, it was Norris headlining the action alone as Major Scott McCoy. But, like many other action films, Delta Force 2 also saw a deadly helicopter crash during filming that took the life of a stunt actor. This time, it was in the Philippines where the action sequel was shooting, and it sadly wasn't just stuntman Jeff Brewer who lost his life in the crash. Alongside him were pilots Don Marshall and Jojo Imperiale, cameraman Gotti Danzig, and key grip Mike Graham. Though only 3 men died at the scene, at least 2 more succumbed to their injuries of the nearly a dozen people hospitalized after the accident. To make matters worse, the production company, notorious low-budget studio Cannon Films, had seen the deaths of at least 10 people while filming numerous projects over the course of 4 years. Another film in a long line that saw deadly helicopter crashes during production, Hired to Kill, is like Delta Force 2, a low-budget action movie from 1990. This one starring Brian Thompson, George Kennedy, and Oliver Reed. Thompson plays a mercenary who poses as a photographer when he's hired to rescue a freedom fighter being held behind enemy lines. During filming the year before the movie hit theaters, a helicopter being used to shoot a mid-air scene crashed, injuring the pilot and several others, and killing a stunt actor. The actor, Clint Carpenter, had been a regular stuntman on the kids' action series VR Troopers, and was riding with a pair of fellow stuntmen. While performing what was later described as a routine flyby, moving across the camera's field of vision set up on a rooftop, the vehicle attempted to make a tight turn. For unexplained reasons, the helicopter failed to achieve the turn and crashed into a group of trees, killing Carpenter, who was pronounced dead before he even made it to a nearby hospital. Passengers Michael Caine, pilot Mark Wolf, and stunt coordinator Mark Cutton, along with a third unknown stuntman, all sustained injuries. Though they suffered broken ribs, a leg fracture, and a punctured lung among them, they were able to escape with their lives.
Houston, we have a problem.
Before Apollo 13 in 1995, it was 1983's The Right Stuff that held the title for Best Film about NASA's spaceflight program. Oddly enough, that movie also included Apollo 13 actor Ed Harris, who plays astronaut John Glenn. He recounts the years that led up to the launching of the Mercury 7, beginning when Chuck Yeager first broke the sound barrier, and includes all the incredibly dangerous exploits of test pilots like Yeager, Glenn, and Alan Shepard. The film features several incredible high-flying stunts, and one of them involves a pilot parachuting to safety from the confines of an experimental aircraft. Unlike in the movie though, the pilot never did make it home safely. Performing the scene was stunt actor and Houston native Joseph Svek, both a veteran of the profession and a qualified parachutist. But during the filming of the ejection, Svek inexplicably failed to pull his ripcord. The parachute never opened and he plummeted to his death. According to a manager of the California City Airport where the scene was being filmed, an investigation revealed that nothing was wrong with Svek's chute, suggesting that it was either a simple error by Svek or that he somehow lost consciousness during the plunge. In the 1930s, Jack Budlong wasn't strictly a stunt performer, he was also a professional horseman and actor. But for the 1941 movie They Died With Their Boots On, a Civil War classic about General Custer that starred Errol Flynn, Olivia de Havilland, and Gene Lockhart, Budlong was brought in for the film's sprawling war scenes. Reportedly, Budlong played both Union and Confederate soldiers at various points in the production, and it was during one sequence when he was in the Southern Greys that the horse rider was killed. Budlong, who is said to have been a close personal friend of Flynn, had persuaded the star into getting him a role as a stunt-performing extra during the film's war scenes. Not much of a veteran stunt actor though, Budlong's inexperience may have been what led him to insist on using a real saber rather than a prop. So, when during filming his horse began bucking due to the simulated artillery exploding around them, Budlong was tossed off the animal and landed right on his very real, very sharp blade. Budlong was taken to a Los Angeles hospital, but it was far too late for him. The saber had punctured his abdomen and exited via his back. He wasn't the only casualty of filming though, as the production of They Died With Their Boots On led to countless injuries and at least 2 more deaths besides Budlong.
You know what's there? Waiting. Beyond that beach. Immortality! Shake it!
Brad Pitt's 2004 ancient war movie Troy, directed by Wolfgang Peterson, adapted Homer's Iliad, the epic poem that depicted the historical Trojan War waged between the Greeks and the Spartans. Its filming was also a massive undertaking and a throwback to epics of the 50s and 60s, which meant it had several large-scale action sequences involving hundreds of extras. It also led to the death of one of the many stunt actors involved in the production. Stuntman George Comieri was admitted to a hospital during filming with serious trauma to his ankle, according to the Times of Malta, while also suffering chest pains and shortness of breath. He underwent surgery, but 2 days later he was dead. Though initially it wasn't realized that his death had been related to an on-set accident, A later inquiry traced the cause of Camileri's death all back to injuries he'd sustained while filming an action scene on Troy. An autopsy revealed that Camileri's death was caused by pulmonary thromboembolism, with the report stating, "Pulmonary thromboembolism is not an uncommon complication following trauma, fracture of the lower leg, surgery to the lower limb, and immobility." According to the investigation, the initial injury occurred when Camilleri had been jumping over the side of a galleon, but mixed signals between extras led to him making an error and jumping from the wrong spot, which he hadn't been prepared for. The 1965 film The Flight of the Phoenix starred James Stewart as a pilot whose plane crashes in the Sahara. Desperately trying to keep himself, his crew, and his passengers alive in the remote desert, his only hope is a passenger whose experience as an aircraft designer has him convinced they can build a new plane out of spare parts from the wreck. It's a nail-biting tale of adventure and survival, but in the making of the movie, a famed stunt pilot who was hired to make risky aerial maneuvers lost his life. An experienced racing pilot who'd worked in Hollywood since the 1930s, Paul Mantz was well known for helping Amelia Earhart and her navigator Fred Noonan prepare for their first attempt to circumnavigate the globe. He was practically pilot royalty in his day, but that didn't mean he was invincible. During filming of The Flight of the Phoenix, he was flying low in a sequence meant to simulate a takeoff when something went wrong and the plane crashed, killing him. Ironically, it wasn't even Mantz who was supposed to be behind the controls that day, but his partner Frank Tallman. At the last minute, though, Tallman injured his knee and Mantz filled in. With Mantz's death, The Flight of the Phoenix may have been a cursed production. In 2004, Dennis Quaid starred in a remake that seriously injured cameraman Kieran Barry. He received $1 million settlement, though no one was killed. Movies about dangerous professions are inherently going to involve precarious stunts. So when it came time to film a story about the construction of a skyscraper, there was extra danger involved. Experienced stuntman A.J. Bakunis was doubling for lead actor George Kennedy on the Lexington, Kentucky set of Steel when tragedy struck. In the scene, he attempted a daring drop that would feature him plunging from the top of a high-rise to simulate the falling death of Kennedy's character. Bakunis was a well-known name in the industry long before he went to work on the film. By all accounts, he had been preparing for the jump for weeks and decided to increase the length of his fall to 323 feet instead of the 9th-story leap he'd already completed. He wasn't doing it to make the stunt more impressive, but instead simply hoping to top a stunt performed on another set by rival stuntman Dar Robinson, who was still nearly a decade away from his own fatal stunt. Bakunis completed the jump as planned, but the airbag below ruptured, injuring him critically right in front of a massive crowd of spectators who had assembled to watch the stunt. The actor was still alive and conscious as he was rushed to the emergency room and treated, but he eventually succumbed to his injuries. Bakunis was only 27.
One thing I'd like to know, are world records worth the risk?
Movies involving high-flying aircraft action can be fraught with danger and typically require the skills of talented stunt pilots who can pull off death-defying maneuvers. That was the case with von Richthofen and Brown, a 1971 World War I epic about one of the greatest flying aces that history has ever known. A passion project for director Roger Corman, who put up much of the financing himself, the film was shot in Ireland and told the story of Manfred von Richthofen, also known as the Red Baron, and the pilot Roy Brown, who took him down. Filming the intense dogfights, though, led to a mid-air collision that killed stuntman Charles Boddington. Following the incident, the Irish government decided to shut down the production's aerial scenes that Corman had scheduled for Weston Airfield, not far from Dublin. According to contemporary accounts, Boddington's disastrous crash in the sky wasn't even the last accident during filming. Just a day later, pilot Lynn Garrison and actor Don Stroud received injuries after an unscheduled crash landing in the Liffey River. It probably isn't much of a surprise to learn that there have been some mishaps on the sets of movies starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. After all, the overly muscled bodybuilder turned actor is known for his explosive action movies, from science fiction and fantasy to military thrillers. In 1988, filming on his buddy cop action comedy Red Heat went a little too far even by Arnold's standards, resulting in the death of stunt actor Benny Dobbins. The film, which was dedicated to Dobbins, had Arnold in the role of a Russian military captain named Ivan Danko. He's sent to Chicago where he teams up with a local cop after they realize they're both looking for the same criminal. Filled with guns blazing shootouts and bare-knuckle brawls, Red Heat is an underrated Arnie classic, but filming one scene that involved the Terminator star duking it out hand-to-hand with a stuntman who wasn't Dobbins led to a death in an unexpected way. During the scene, Dobbins was serving as the stunt coordinator, helping stage the scene with his two actors when he suddenly collapsed. Suffering a fatal heart attack, Dobbins was airlifted to a local hospital but didn't survive. He was 55 years old and left behind work in many action classics like First Blood, Commando, and The Running Man.
Director Richard Fleischer has a long list of classics on his resume, including sci-fi favorites like Fantastic Voyage and Soylent Green. But in 1987, just a few years after helming Conan the Destroyer starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, he turned out a comedy caper called $1 Million Mystery that's not quite as well remembered. Unfortunately, what it is known for is an on-set death involving a legendary stuntman named Dar Robinson. Robinson was a stunt pioneer who invented a safety system known as the decelerator, used for stunts involving falls from great heights. He'd worked on several major movies, including Steve McQueen's Papillon and The First Lethal Weapon. In 1986, however, Robinson paid the ultimate price for a daring shot while filming Million Dollar Mystery in Arizona. He was completing a motorcycle chase scene when he lost control of his bike in the middle of a high-speed turn, launched off a ledge, crashed into a rock, and impaled himself on a tree. He died en route to the hospital.
I am afraid of most all the work that I do. Anybody who says that they're not afraid of this type of work is either foolish or crazy.
Prior to his death, Robinson had set records with his increasingly daring jumps, inspiring his final film's stunt coordinator, George Fisher, to remark to the Los Angeles Times, "We have a saying, it's always the easy ones that get you." Robinson was 39 when he lost his life. In the early 90s, Steven Seagal was an action superstar. He was also no stranger to controversy, with a reputation for being a total nightmare on set and getting into fights with cast and crew. But a 2000 incident on the Toronto set of his film Exit Wounds wasn't a case of frayed nerves or inflated ego, but a workplace tragedy. Canadian stuntman Chris Lehman lost his life when he and another stuntman were supposed to jump from an upside-down van while it was being towed by a truck. Instead of leaping feet first from the vehicle, Lehman fell on his head, causing injuries that ultimately proved fatal. As a representative of Warner Brothers would later explain to ABC News, he made an error with his footing. He landed badly and hit his head on the pavement. "We are very sad about this. It doesn't happen very often." In addition to multiple skull fractures, Lehman suffered from severe swelling of the brain and died a few days after the accident. Lehman was 35. Jumping from great heights is dangerous, and airbags are crucial in making sure a stunt actor lands safely. But sometimes, even when a stunt person hits their mark, it still goes wrong. Such was the case on the set of Bikini Island, when stuntman J.C. Curran was working on a jump from the Malibu cliffs. It was the first day of shooting, and the scene required Curran to take a tumble of more than 60 feet off the seaside cliff. Though the actor did manage to hit the airbag, it wasn't dead center. He landed on the edge. The resulting bounce didn't send him straight up as intended, but unexpectedly and violently off to the side and in the wrong direction. The force of the bounce sent him speeding directly into the adjacent rock face, and he died from his injuries. Curran was just 34. Westerns were once the biggest genre in Hollywood, and with so many cowboys, ranchers, and rough-riding outlaws on screen, a bevy of stunt riders were needed. One of them was Fred Kennedy, who'd worked all over Tinseltown performing all kinds of horseback stunts, from chases and jumps to falls. Active in the industry since the late 30s, Kennedy had seemingly done it all. He'd even helped train horses in how to fall without injury, following an outcry from the SPCA over animal cruelty. But even the most experienced stunt actors can still have accidents. The 1959 John Ford film The Horse Soldiers included a scene in which Kennedy was to fall off his saddle, a move so difficult that director Ford even offered him a bonus. But when action was called, Kennedy slipped and fell off his stirrup step, breaking his neck when he hit the ground. According to reports, actress Constance Towers, who was supposed to run over to the actor and plant a kiss on him after the fall, noticed he was in distress, but it was too late.
Gosh, the only way you can explain it was like picking up 1,000 breaking bones. He broke his neck.
Kennedy died at the scene. Stunt actor deaths are usually the result of something going wrong, but on rare occasions, the stunt goes off without a hitch and something goes terribly wrong after. That's exactly what happened on the set of the 1978 movie High Riders, when 29-year-old stuntman Vic Rivers drowned in a shallow pond after a car chase that saw him submerged in the water. In the scene, Rivers, an experienced stunt driver who'd previously worked on the cult classic Grand Theft Auto, was supposed to race down a road, fly his car off a bridge, and roll the vehicle over into the body of water below. And he did just that. Rivers' car flipped and plunged into what was described as a 3-foot stream bed located on Paramount Ranch. But after the stunt, Rivers emerged from the vehicle lightheaded and unable to stand. He then collapsed into the water and drowned before help could reach him. It's no surprise to find dangerous stunts in major action movies, but it's a little more unexpected when it happens in a romantic comedy. Yet, over in Australia, one such rom-com actually led to the death of stunt actor Colin Dragsback. It was 1996, and filming was underway on Love Serenade, starring future Lord of the Rings actor Miranda Otto. The tragedy occurred while filming a scene that had Dragsback taking a fall off a grain silo. He was supposed to land on a safety airbag, but a critical error resulted in the device malfunctioning, and Dragsback was killed when it didn't adequately cushion his 29-meter fall. His death cast a pall over the production, one that the film's director, Shirley Barrett, had to work hard to get through. When the film was released, she told the New York Times, "It was absolutely devastating when it happened. It has been very hard for us to live with. To think because of this idea of yours, a comedy even, someone had died. But we just kept going. We had to." Dragsback's death prompted calls for improved safety procedures, but stunt actor Chris Anderson, who ran his own stunt agency, felt that new rules weren't necessary. He argued that it was the attitude of productions that needed to change, telling the Sydney Morning Herald, "The rules and regulations are very good. It's a matter of policing them more properly. People are becoming complacent." Throughout the history of Hollywood, there have been stories about cursed movies whose development, filming, and release were plagued with problems.
You're all going to die.
One of the earliest to earn the cursed label was the 1925 biblical epic Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ, which starred Ramon Navarro in the title role. In addition to an out-of-control blaze, a director fired partway through production, leading to a complete page-one do-over, and local riots that halted shooting, a stuntman died filming the chariot race. It all went down during the climactic race, or at least an early take of the action-packed sequence. As reported by Yahoo Entertainment, star Francis X. Bushman, who played one of the chariot racers, described the incident, saying, "During one take, we went around the curve and the wheel broke on the other fellow's chariot. The hub hit the ground and the guy shot up in the air about 30 feet. It was like a slow-motion film. He fell on a pile of lumber and died of internal injuries." In addition to the stunt rider, multiple horses died during production of the sequence. You'll be forgiven for not remembering the 1998 disaster flick Firestorm. Starring former NFL defensive end Howie Long, the film tells the story of a team of first responders partnering with prison inmates to stop a raging forest fire.
Every second counts here. Trust me, you don't want to get caught in the path of a firestorm.
The film was a major box office flop, but not before overcoming plenty of production challenges, including the death of one of its stunt performers. The death was the result of a terrifying mid-air malfunction during the filming of an aerial action sequence. The shoot was underway at the Stiwamus Chief, a granite dome and popular hiking destination in British Columbia. Known for its high cliffs and scenic views, the Stiwamus Chief borders Howe Sound and overlooks several large forests and summits. For the aerial scene, director Dean Semler planned to have stuntman Keith Perepelkin jump from a moving helicopter into the trees below the cliff face. Unfortunately, Perepelkin's parachute didn't open as planned, and he fell to his death. According to a report in the Seattle Times, Perepelkin, age 32, died instantly on impact, with both his main chute and his emergency backup chute failing to deploy. In some ways, the silent film era wasn't all that unlike today's film industry, in which movie makers constantly try to top one another with bigger and bolder productions. But that meant pushing the boundaries of safety in the years before protections for stunt people were put in place. Sadly, that led to many performers losing their lives and productions that became much more audacious and far riskier. Leading the way were films like The Skywayman, which took moviegoers into the wild blue yonder to witness the death-defying aerial action of stunt pilot Ormer Locklear. Known as the King of the Wingwalkers, Locklear dazzled audiences by stepping out of the cockpit and taking a stroll while thousands of feet above the ground, a feat that had to be seen to be believed. He made his screen debut in the 1919 film The Great Air Robbery, and a year later he was cast in The Skywayman as Captain Norman, an American pilot who goes up against German fighters. But in a twist he probably didn't see coming, Locklear's role proved to be the final performance of his life. His death occurred on the final day of shooting during a stunt that involved the use of flares to make the plane appear as if it was engulfed in flames. Shot at an airfield in Los Angeles, the stunt went wrong when Locklear didn't pull out of a dive on time. Crashing into the ground from a height of 10,000 feet, Locklear and his co-pilot Milt Elliott died at the scene. Before he was the Caped Crusader, Michael Keaton was a comedy actor, and just 2 years before Tim Burton directed him in Batman, he starred in the 1987 comedy The Squeeze. In the film, Keaton plays a bumbling, beleaguered artist who gets caught up in a blackmail scheme, then gets help from a beautiful private detective.
Hi, Rachel Dobbs. A pleasure.
See? This is working.
The film made the news before it hit theaters when a stuntman died while shooting a scene on location in Hoboken, New Jersey. Veteran stuntman Vic Magnotta, who worked on such 80s classics as Splash and Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill, was filming a car chase that was to culminate with a dramatic vehicular dive into the Hudson River. But after speeding off a specially designed stunt ramp and doing a flip into the water as intended, the windshield was dislodged, and Magnotta became trapped in the car beneath the surface. Rescue divers who were waiting in the water to pull Magnotta from the vehicle were unable to remove him from his safety harness in time to save his life. Plenty of movies have portrayed epic battle scenes involving hundreds of actors, extras, and stunt performers, but in the early days, those kinds of sweeping war movies could lead to serious injury and even death. One of the worst such incidents occurred on the set of The Charge of the Light Brigade, the 1936 Errol Flynn classic about a British officer serving in India in the 19th century whose fiancée is swept off her feet by a handsome fellow officer. The film is famous for its pulse-pounding military action, including a climactic battle with over 100 actors on horseback. Of course, back in the 1920s, horses in film were physically tripped by a wire to make them fall, often leading to injuries or even the death of those animals. And in the making of The Charge of the Light Brigade, dozens of horses were killed, with some estimates placing the total at nearly 200 equine deaths. But it wasn't just animals who died. A stunt rider also lost his life due to the sloppy setup. He fell off his horse onto an upended sword sticking out of the sand and was impaled through the chest. Following the success of Lethal Weapon 3, Danny Glover and Joe Pesci re-teamed for the 1997 Disney comedy Gone Fishin', a story about two fishing buddies who become targets of a career conman. The production made extensive use of water stunts, and during the making of one action scene, a boat crash led to the death of 29-year-old stuntwoman Janet Wilder. As fate would have it, Wilder was aboard the boat with fellow stuntman Scott Wilder, her husband, who, along with several others, managed to survive their injuries. The deadly boat crash took place during a sequence in which Pesci and Glover's characters were supposed to jump their boat over a patch of mangroves and land between two boats. Stunt doubles were used for the two stars, and the first take of the scene was deemed unacceptable. Director Christopher Kane wanted a do-over. He was unhappy with the take because of the slow speed of the boat. A second take on another day increased the speed, but at the cost of Wilder's life, as the boat was sent hurtling off a stunt ramp, colliding with two boats full of extras. A movie sequel to Jules Verne's classic 19th century novel, Around the World in 18 Days, stars William Desmond as Phineas Fogg, the grandson of Verne's globetrotting character. During production of the 12-part silent cinematic serial, stunt double Gene Perkins was hired to help stage a wild sequence where he was to dangle from a plane on a rope ladder and drop onto a moving train. He didn't survive the stunt. Director Clarence Brown told a 1927 issue of Photoplay that a stunt pilot miscalculation resulted in Perkins' death. In Brown's version of events, Perkins was suspended on the ladder, which was hanging from the plane, and the pilot was supposed to maneuver him above the train just low enough that he could safely jump onto the roof. But Brown said, the pilot swooped too low, the ladder banged Perk against the side of a freight car at 75 miles an hour, and Mrs. Jean Perkins was a stunt widow. That's all. The film, including footage of the stunt Perkins gave his life for, no longer survives and is considered one of many examples of lost media. The Indian film industry is booming, but as with Hollywood, stunts have sometimes resulted in death there as well. One recent catastrophe happened on the set of the 2023 film Viduthalai Part 1, co-written and directed by Vetrimaran. Viduthalai Part 1 is the story of a police constable on the hunt for the leader of an extremist dissident group called Makal Padai. It's a tense crime thriller full of exciting action scenes, but one of them left stuntman Suresh dead. Suresh was filming a stunt that required him to swing from a rope harness suspended from a crane as part of a sequence involving a train crash. Unfortunately, something went disastrously wrong when the stuntman was 20 feet in the air. The rope holding him to the crane snapped. Suresh fell to the ground and was mortally wounded. Rushed to a nearby hospital, he was pronounced dead on arrival. The Great Circus Mystery is another 1920s silent serial that's been lost to time. It starred Joe Bonomo in an adventure story about the search for a valuable ruby. Not only is the film impossible to see today, but it's one of those long-forgotten pieces of entertainment that's just as hard to find information about as it is to watch. But one thing we do know about the production is that in one of its thrilling chase scenes, two stuntmen lost their lives. The female star of the serial was Louise Lorraine. Though she preferred to do all her own stunts as often as possible, a practice that was more common in the silent film era. When it came to a particular car chase scene, director Jay Marchant insisted Lorraine not be in the car and let a stunt double take her place. During shooting, it at first seemed like the stunt went off without a hitch. The car, occupied by stuntmen Frank Tully and Tony Brack, went careening out of control, toppled over, and came to a stop in a devastating crash. But when the cameras stopped rolling, both Tully and Brack were dead. Footage of the moment of their deaths was kept in the finished film. There have been countless movies based on Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan, from the earliest silent films to a big-budget modern reinvention starring Alexander Skarsgård. 2016's The Legend of Tarzan didn't kick off the franchise that the studio might have been hoping for. But back in the 1940s, the Tarzan films were among the most popular adventure series in theaters. Regrettably, however, in filming Tarzan and the Mermaids, the 1948 film that concluded actor Johnny Weissmuller's iconic portrayal of the Lord of the Jungle, a stuntman was killed on set. The 12th and final Tarzan film to star Weissmuller, who began his run in 1932 with Tarzan the Ape Man, the film saw the jungle adventurer come to the aid of a young woman who's being forced to marry a despotic madman. The film involved loads of stunt work in water, as you'd expect from the title, and Mexican stunt performer Angel Garcia was tasked with performing a cliff dive into the ocean. While executing the maneuver during the production in Acapulco, though, Garcia dove into the water, and from there, reports vary as to whether he was killed when he struck a raft or when waves slammed him back against the cliffs. Many stunt performers have died tragically over the years, but few of these deaths have been as unsettling as the recent loss of an Indian stuntman named Vivek in the 2021 romantic thriller Love You, Rachu. During filming, Vivek was caught on a high-tension wire that wasn't part of the stunt and was electrocuted. He was rushed to a hospital but didn't survive. In a statement reported by the India Times, police said, stunt performer Vivek was performing the stunt for the film Love You, Rachu and standing on a crane near an 11 kV electric wire. Somehow, a metal wire came in contact with the wire and he got electrocuted. Vivek's death led to the film's director and producer being detained by local police as they investigated potential negligence on the part of production. A government official commented that safety standards on the film may have been ignored, and Vivek's death became the catalyst for safety reform in the country's movie industry. The film's star, Ajay Rao, also commented on the incident, telling the India Times, "I heard their screams and rushed to see what happened and came to know that Vivek died on the spot. I was not part of the scene, a high-tension line was nearby, and the film crew stocked water around the spot for the fight scene." The most famous death involving a helicopter on the set of a movie is the catastrophe that killed Vic Morrow and 2 Vietnamese children during the filming of Twilight Zone, the movie. But there's another equally horrific but lesser-known helicopter-related tragedy that occurred during the making of the 1981 Indian film Kolilakam. The movie's star, Malayalam stuntman Krishnan Nair, who went by the stage name Jayan, was killed during a daring sequence where he rode a motorbike and jumped aboard the helicopter while it was mid-air. Jayan had been a stunt performer for years, and as the lead of the film, he was happy to perform all of his own stunts. He had high expectations, reportedly demanding a second take when he wasn't happy with the first. It was one of the last mistakes he'd ever make. While cameras were rolling and Jayan was hanging onto the copter's skids, the pilot lost control of the aircraft, crashing it into the ground below and killing the actor on impact. The Clint Eastwood action thriller The Eiger Sanction may be one of the actor's most underrated movies. He stars as a retired assassin brought back for one more mission after the death of a close friend. Joining a team of mountaineers, his job is to ferret out a Soviet spy while scaling a treacherous peak in the Swiss Alps.
Bowman, in your opinion, do these men climb to prove their manhood, or is it more a matter of compensating for inferiority feelings?
Engaging, action-packed, and brimming with first-class location stunt work, The Eiger Sanction was the perfect vehicle for Eastwood. Unfortunately, the production wasn't a pleasant experience for many involved, and was capped off by the death of climber and photographer Dave Knowles. The film was shot on location on the treacherous Eiger Mountain. Climbers had died on the mountain previously, and shooting an action thriller on the cliff face had never been attempted. The tragedy came when production wanted to get a point-of-view shot of climbers seeing rocks fall on them. Chick Scott, another climber who worked on the film, said in a 2015 interview with Jasper Fitzhugh, "I can't say I had a premonition, I just felt really frightened and didn't want to be there."
I didn't actually kill him, you know. Well, I probably won't actually kill you.
Scott took a break during the rockfall sequence and later tried to join Knowles atop the mountain by helicopter. But when he arrived, he was told there'd been a deadly incident. He recalled, "We flew up to that same location and there was the scene that we had been faking for 2 days. Dave Knowles hanging dead on the end of the rope." According to Scott, production was halted and the crew regrouped, but they resumed filming several days later. The accident shook the cast, including Eastwood and the other stuntmen. who took out six-figure life insurance policies before going back to work.
Fake jousting is safe enough, right? Think again. From a disastrous skydiving reenactment to a fatal fall in one of the most successful TV shows of all time, these stunts had deadly results. In 1993, Chuck Norris, star of 80s actioners like The Delta Force and Missing in Action, made the move to the small screen with Walker, Texas Ranger. The series told the story of Sergeant Cordell Walker, a Texas Ranger, Vietnam veteran, and expert in just about everything because it's Chuck Norris. Each action-packed installment brimmed with bare-knuckled brawls, exciting shootouts, and hard-hitting car chases, and one of those scenes led to the death of stuntman William Charles Skeen. It happened in 1999 while cameras were rolling on a car chase in Cedar Hill State Park. Skeen was a passenger in a Suburban when it made a 140-foot leap through the air and crashed down with devastating impact. But it wasn't the stunts, which, aside from the rough landing, went off as expected, that killed Skeen. Instead, he suffered a heart attack while shooting the sequence. Police acknowledged that the stuntman's safety gear was all in good order, telling the Washington Post, "It flew through the air like an eagle and didn't do anything weird, but that sucker hit and it hit hard." Skeen was rushed to a nearby hospital where he died of cardiac arrest. Norris, who also served as the show's executive producer, said in an official statement, "We are grief-stricken over our friend's sudden and tragic death." In 1993, Brandon Lee famously lost his life while filming a stunt for The Crow.
Everybody waits for him to get up, and he didn't get up.
5 years later, history would seem to repeat itself, as a stunt during the production of the film's spin-off series, The Crow: Stairway to Heaven, led to the death of another actor, Mark Ackerstream. Stairway to Heaven launched in 1998 and starred Mark Dacascos as the immortal Eric Draven, resurrected from the dead to seek justice among the living.
Hello.
What the hell are you?
Death without parole.
The series was filmed in British Columbia, and the incident occurred while filming an action sequence designed to send debris soaring through the sky after a massive explosion. Ackerstream wasn't an active participant in the stunt. According to another stunt actor on the series, he was merely a bystander. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police explains the incident by saying, "A small, controlled explosion was detonated on a rowboat on the shoreline. The film crew were prepared for the explosion and were well behind a safety rope. The piece of debris was sent up in the air, cleared a large tree, and came down to strike the victim on the head." One of the most industry-shaking on-set deaths transpired during the production of a scene for the popular action show Airwolf, which killed young stuntman Reed Rondell. At just 22 years old, Rondell already had a strong filmography. He'd doubled for a young Tom Cruise on Risky Business, The Outsiders, and All the Right Moves. In 1985, though, Rondell lost his life while shooting a helicopter sequence on Airwolf. He was doubling for the show's star, Jan Michael Vincent, when his helicopter went down and was engulfed in flames. Rondell was pulled from the crash covered in burns and multiple serious injuries, including lacerations to his face and several broken bones. He was declared dead on the scene. An autopsy revealed that severe burns were the ultimate cause of death. Thankfully, stunt pilot Scott Mayer, who'd been flying the craft, survived. A contemporary report in the Los Angeles Times revealed that the stunt was not a very dangerous one and was in fact routine flying, where it was tailing another helicopter when it failed to make a turn and crashed into a hill. Though later reports indicated that Rondell had cocaine in his system at the time of the accident, the drug was not believed to have played any role in the crash. The long-forgotten series LA Heat had a troubled road to the screen. Filmed in 1996, the show, an action drama centered on a pair of LA detectives, failed to get a distributor in the US until 1999, and the entirety of the show's 2 seasons and 48 episodes were filmed before the first episode even aired domestically.
I've got over 100 hours of my life invested in that. You're under arrest.
But getting ratings in America wasn't its only problem. One action scene filmed for an early episode of LA Heat also cost a stuntman his life. The death of Paul Dallas involved an airbag designed to cushion a stunt actor's dangerous fall. In this case, the stuntman was to have taken a 3-story, 57-foot plunge from the top of a power plant platform while filming at the Department of Water and Power's Valley Generating Station in Sun Valley, California. When Dallas landed on the airbag, however, he didn't quite hit the target correctly and sustained sustained a fatal head injury. Los Angeles Police Sergeant Pete Weinhold said in a statement, "He was ejected backward. The back of his head hit a metal railing." When emergency personnel got to Dallas, he was already in full cardiac arrest. Attempts to revive him were made, but his injuries were too severe, and he succumbed to his wounds. The death of John Bernecker on the set of The Walking Dead wasn't just regrettable and tragic, it truly rattled the entire entertainment industry. Not just because it was the death of a stuntman that occurred during the production of a TV show, but because it happened on the set of one of the biggest and most popular shows of the last 25 years. Suffice to say, it got plenty of media attention, and in the aftermath of Bernecker's death, there was a fierce 2-year legal battle between the studio and his family. The deadly disaster occurred while Bernecker was shooting a fight scene for an episode of the show's 8th season in 2017. The scene required the stunt actor to fall from a balcony and land on a standard stunt mat, but something went wrong as Bernecker tumbled. Throwing himself off the balcony headfirst, Bernecker must have realized that he might miss the safety pad, because witnesses says he attempted to slow his fall by grabbing a railing. Missing the pad, the stuntman hit the concrete floor instead. Bernecker initially survived the fall and was rushed to a local hospital in Atlanta, near where filming was taking place. Unfortunately, he was pronounced dead shortly after, the result of a traumatic head injury. 2 years later, Bernecker's estate was handed a favorable judgment in a wrongful death suit, and while Studio AMC was found not to have been negligent, the family was handed an $8.6 million settlement by the court on civil damages. Ultimately, though, it was deemed Bernecker was not an employee of AMC, but rather an independent contractor. This limited the studio's liability. As reality shows took off in the 90s, new entries in the genre began pushing the envelope with more extreme content, leading to hit 2000s reality shows like Survivor and Fear Factor that challenged participants in risky competitions.
If you want, you can come back in.
Shut up, Joe!
I Dare You, The Ultimate Challenge arrived around the same time, a series in which stuntmen tried to break records. In the year 2000, one of those stuntmen died. His name was Brady Michaels, and he was working on a scene in Arizona when the accident occurred. The feat would have seen him parachute down to land atop a stationary train. Unfortunately, while preparing for the stunt, Michaels slipped off a ladder and fell 15 feet from the platform, hitting his head on the rocks below. Though he was taken away for emergency medical care, Michaels fell into a coma and never woke up. After a week in the hospital, the decision was made to disconnect him from life support, and he died at the age of 36. Outlets like Variety, which reported on the fatal incident, worried that Michael's death would be a major hit to the rapidly exploding reality show industry. But producers defended the dangers by noting their commitment to safety. Producer Bruce Nash said, "This was an unfortunate accident that could have happened on the set of a sitcom." Along the same lines as I Dare You, the British docu-series 999 recreated dangerous real-life incidents. In this case, emergency situations where first responders are called in to save lives. For those unfamiliar with 999, the show takes its name from the 3-digit phone number used for emergencies in the United Kingdom, making the series analogous to America's Rescue 911. But while filming a reenactment for a 1993 episode, legendary stuntman Tip Tipping was killed in a fatal fall. Tipping was a veritable icon in his native Britain stunt community, having worked on several classic films, including Force 10 from Navarone and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and 8 episodes of the iconic sci-fi TV series Doctor Who. Unfortunately, the legendary Daredevil died while filming a scene that involved jumping out of an airplane. The sequence was supposed to be recreating a skydiving accident in which a man named Terry Wakenshaw leapt from a plane and got his parachute caught in the wheels of the aircraft, but managed to survive by popping an emergency cutaway handle. Unfortunately for Tipping, his version of the jump didn't go as planned, and unlike Wakenshaw, he found himself out of control before falling to his death. Perhaps most shocked by the incident was Wakenshaw himself. He told The Independent, "My heart stopped when I heard what had happened. I realized that it could so easily have happened to me." The British series Time Team isn't the sci-fi romp you might expect from its title. In reality, it's a docu-series of sorts that has a team of expert archaeologists exploring dig sites around their native UK.
Have many Tudor armories been excavated before?
None. This is what makes this particular site unique if we find it.
The series, which ran for 2 decades, didn't just do a little subterranean excavation and simple scientific studying, though. It also recreated historical scenes. In a 2008 special, The Real Knights of the Round Table, 2 participants were brought in to demonstrate a medieval jousting competition that led to the death of stuntman Paul Allen. For the scene, Allen was fitted with era-specific armor and protective gear, including a helmet that proved to have a fatal flaw. The helmet's eye holes were too large, allowing broken pieces of wood created by a breakaway stunt lance to pass through. In the horrific incident, a large balsa wood splinter lodged itself in Allen's eye, and though he was airlifted to a hospital to have life-saving measures performed, he died from cardiorespiratory failure and a penetrating brain injury. Following his death, it was also reported that Allen had no experience jousting, and the helmet he'd been wearing wasn't rated for receiving real offensive strikes, only for less intense stunt fights at carnivals. Ultimately, the inquest determined that his death was due to the production hiring an inexperienced rider and the use of the wrong protective gear.